What's up, guys? We're live on YouTube. If you guys aren't watching this on YouTube, join us every Tuesday. Usually it's 3 p.m. We're an hour late today. That's okay. I'm sure there's going to be someone that logs in and watches. But head over to our YouTube channel, Modern Craftsman, and tune in every Tuesday as we live stream the show. Tyler, today we unfortunately had a guest bail on us.
Very last minute.
Very last minute. We are distraught.
Yeah.
But last time this happened is when we talked about health, and it was the most engaging conversation we had via Instagram DMs. It was pretty wild.
I was unaware of that. We don't handle our Instagram DMs. We have somebody internally do that then hands them over to us. And I was unaware of how engaging it actually was until you guys spoke about it. So
Yeah,
that's interesting.
It was like the health came up a ton. I got, at least a dozen people reaching out saying, "Yeah, I gave up drinking for a while too." It was super interesting. And I think that's just the product of the influence that things like social media have in the world. But today we're gonna get into a couple questions that you guys have reached out to us via those DMs. But before we do, we want to thank our sponsor, Andersen Windows. Andersen's Easy Connect joining system delivers the ultimate in job site conveniences, making it easier to install the large combinations homeowners desire while also reducing job site resources needed.
In fact, most contractors surveyed said they could reduce the number of installers by 50% using the Andersen Easy Connect joining system.
And this patented system utilizes interlocking fiberglass joining plates to give you design flexibility without compromising performance. See the difference for yourself by visiting andersenwindows.com.
The Easy Connect joining system is available with the A series and also the 100 series windows if you guys are interested.
And that is Andersen with a SEN at the end. This podcast is also brought to you by Buildertrend, a more efficient team, instant problem solving, and clients who feel engaged and will rave about you to anyone who will listen.
Strong communication is key to any successful construction project.
But accomplishing that is easier said than done because staying connected is harder than ever for busy, hardworking construction teams. There are so many distractions in a construction business owner's daily work. It's hard enough to know what you're up to, let alone what your team members are up to.
Buildertrend changes all that. You'll get the constant calls, texts, and emails under control, as all communication for any project can happen. Client and subs have their own portals to see what's happening 24/7, and your team is free from admin work and better able to make decisions faster with all the details right at their fingertips.
So if you're ready to make your team a collaboration powerhouse, learn more about it at buildertrend.com/MC communication.
You want to be a collaboration powerhouse?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, man.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's see the muscles.
On the topic of collaboration, let's talk about communication. Someone reached out to us about going back to clients and asking for more money when building a custom house. And interestingly, I had a phone call the other day on one of those consulting calls that we do, and this was the exact topic. He's like, "Hey, I don't know how let me back up. I had dropped the term cost plus, and he was unaware of cost plus. Everything he does is fixed cost. So I gave him the rundown on cost plus, but he said, he's pricing all these jobs, but oftentimes something will change, or, maybe he accounted for a $20 a square foot tile, but his scope didn't clearly define like what he was carrying. And he had $6,000 in the budget, and then they go buy a $100 tile. And they go back and like, well, you included tile. He's like, well, I only included 20. And he's like, well, you didn't say that. You just said I included.
Where's
tile.
he located?
He was in LA.
Hmm.
So, and I think it sounds like he does stuff like sub 1 million.
Yeah.
So a lot of that, I feel like a lot of the sub 1 million is difficult in the cost plus world. So a lot of people are pushing for fixed cost.
Yeah.
But this question came up on the call, and as well as in our DMs on the Modern Craftsman Instagram, about going back to a client and asking for more money when something changes. And he goes on to say his dad's been in the business for a long time, and his dad has always kind of just absorbed those costs, which, I mean, we don't have to dig into that, is wrong, right? Like, at the end of the day, it's like his dad thinks he's doing a good thing for the client. Like, hey, I'll just make it work. Like, not a big deal. I'll get it done. But the reality is, the reason, I think, the reason that his dad and a lot of people are in the position of, hey, I'm just gonna get it done and I'm not gonna chase chase down the money, is because we have this weird emotion of like feeling bad that we're asking for more money when
Yeah.
something changes for the cost. But if you really dig into that and try to figure out, like, well, why do you feel bad? It all comes back to the fact that they lack communication, where it's, something changes and they don't communicate immediately in that moment that, hey, this is more money. It's, oftentimes they're following up and like, hey, by the way, that soft close pocket door I installed, that was actually,
Yeah.
that you asked for, that was like that little stab.
Yeah.
But that was $600 more. It's like, well, I'm not. People feel weird asking. A lot of people feel weird asking because it's done in, like, they ordered it, they put it in, they forgot to ask for the money, then it gets down to the bottom, and then, the classic, like, hey, the job's done, but here's a change order.
Yeah. I mean, it like those situations, if you were this is where cost plus and having a very detailed budget come
Mhm.
in to help you, because you now have numbers to back up every transaction.
Yeah.
Where if you have this established detailed budget, even if it's fixed price, if you have a number in there for tile and they see that number and they go to select a tile, and you can say, "Hey, that's fine. You love that tile, but this is what we accounted for.
Yeah.
Um, it's this much more. Are you willing to make that cost upgrade? Is that worth it to you?" So it cost plus obviously gives you some wiggle room there,
Mhm.
as far as budgeting goes, but I think even just a more detailed budget allocating values to every item gives you some backing there if there are price increases or changes. But as you said, the communication there, it needs to happen at the point of transaction or
Right.
when you're making selections. If you're waiting until the end of the job, at that point you should probably be absorbing those costs because you didn't manage that budget correctly when it needed to be managed. You can't manage it after the selections are made.
And I'm going to derail for just a second here, because one of my trades posted on his Instagram the other day. He was clearly having some issues with some GCs paying him, and I we went back and forth on DM for a minute. But this is like the classic, example of why not everyone should be a business owner. It's like, hey, I'm a really great carpenter, a really great builder, and then they go into business and they struggle to pay their trades on time. They struggle to, effectively get the accounts receivable system in place where they're making sure that they are paid for all of these things. At the end of the day, you know the the the, the fact is that the clients are, in one way or the other, asking for this stuff. Like, they're not, and they're asking, yeah, of course they want a good deal on it. They want to be treated fairly. Some people want a deeper discount than most, but ultimately, like, this is like the vetting process of, good client, good builder. But it's equally as bad to, not have the cash to pay your trades as it is not to collect the cash that you are deserving. And then oftentimes it comes down to the fact that, hey, listen, you're just not a like, you don't have the business sense. Like, you're a great craftsman, you're a great, implementer, you can execute this work, but when it comes down to making sure that you're making the margins you need, you're not, because you don't have something in place. And the simplest thing and the first thing is exactly what we're talking about, is the communication, where it's like, hey, I'd love to, you know, I've there's a million examples we could use. We keep using tile, but it's like, I'm trying to think of something that's a little bit more vague.
I mean,
Um,
if you take it out of context, out of construction, it's similar, or you could equate this to going out to eat and wanting to make a substitution for something, where
Mm.
if you want to substitute something with your meal, that server should be like, "Hey, it's this much more if you want that," or it doesn't call yeah, you can sub that out at no cost.
You know what it
You
is?
can
It's
you
always
can't just
avocados.
right? But
It's
you can't
avocado.
just give them the avocados and then bring the bill and be like, "Oh, yeah, it was $5 more for avocados,"
Right.
because then the customer's gonna be
Yeah.
pissed. Be like, "Hey, if you want that, this is how much more it is. Do
Mhm.
you want that?" And let them make the decision at that point, but to not say anything at the selection at the point of their selection and then just put it on top, it it's
It
I don't
feels
know.
bad. It feels terrible. It's
Yeah,
like, "Oh,
there's a
why didn't you let me know?"
let them make the decision based on the price or the accessibility or
Right.
the ease of installation, whatever it may be, but that needs to be a conversation before the selection's made.
But Tyler, what if I don't know how much it's gonna be? Or what if I don't know it's more money?
As far as you being the contractor or the customer.
I'm the customer. Tyler, you're
So
telling like, "Hey, Tyler, I wanna you know what? All that porcelain tile that's in my bathroom, I actually wanna do a herringbone marble."
it's the same thing. You need to have numbers and a scope to validate what your pricing is and what's included and what's not included, whether
And
it's
that
cost
starts with
plus
the
or fixed
proposal.
price. Yeah, and like whether it doesn't necessarily matter if it's fixed price or cost plus. If there's not a design, if there's not a scope, and there's not selections
Mhm,
made, or I mean, even if there's allowances, right? You don't have porcelain or marble spec.
mhm,
If you have a specific monetary value and a quantity, now you have something to back up against where it's like, hey, we changed the cabinet design. Initially, yeah, it was only this many square feet of countertops. This is what we priced at that foot.
mhm,
Now, with the cabinet design changing, there's this many more square feet of countertop, and you chose this countertop material versus that. But if you just have a number in there, they're going to be like, hey, well, we thought that covered any countertop selection, however much countertop we needed. We didn't realize that we could only get granite and this many square feet at that cost. So it comes down to having a comprehensive scope and a comprehensive budget so that you have a leg to stand on, whether it's fixed price or cost plus. I
and
think that resolves a lot of the communication and the issues because it's all out there for everyone to see.
And that's the work. So I want to talk about pre-construction real quick on this because, you know, I think that there's a difference for us where it's estimating and pre-construction and construction. And people always talk, we talk about pre-construction, you should get paid for that. But for us, depending on the job at least, we are oftentimes putting together an estimate. And that estimate might be really high level or it might be detailed depending on like how much skin we want to put into the game up front. But ultimately, our goal to be paid for pre-construction is that, when we get through that initial estimate, that we just need to figure out like, hey, if it's high level, hey, this is like $3 to $4 million job. Are you comfortable with that? We might be able to sign them on pre-construction, help define the scope from that point on. But maybe we don't. Maybe we need to do a little bit more digging. And I'm actually looking at one that's in front of me right now. But hey, we spent a little bit more time. It took us a few days to put it together, but now we have a detailed cost estimation on this project, but it's super defined. It's, everything is outlined exactly the way that we're interpreting the drawings. And at the end of the day, we knew what their budget was going into it. We needed to make sure we were going to be able to hit that. So from there, if we can't, we'll value engineer or offer up value engineering options to figure out how to do that. But ultimately, we're pricing what they're asking. And the reason I bring this up is that is what we're being asked to do, is to price what they're requesting. And oftentimes, and most of the time, people have an issue with what it costs. And it's like, well, but I didn't I didn't design this.
Yeah.
This is what you've asked for. And, there's the larger issue that they go find someone else that does it super cheap and they're utilizing trades that aren't certified, that aren't insured properly, that aren't making a fair living, that are strapped, that, we have talked about it before where it's like we are squeezing the little guys on the bottom, that are specialty trades that make, barely enough to make ends meet. So this person can have a luxury 8,000 square foot home.
So something that you said, we didn't design this. I don't I understand how that's relevant, but I also don't think that that's a be all end all, because
Mm.
had you designed it, you still don't know the price of something as you design it. Even if you handled all design in
Fair,
house,
totally
you're
fair,
coming
yeah.
up with conceptual, like, so say that you over designed something and it was over budget, and yeah, we did design it. We own that. It's more than we thought. Now, maybe it's your duty to redesign or value engineer that, and maybe you're donating that time for free, where you're
Totally.
not charging them an hourly basis. Yeah, we designed that. But that's not, hey, this is what we designed. We thought we were going to get it in this budget and it's not in this budget. So we're just going to do it for the original budget. That doesn't make any sense
Mhm.
whatsoever. So I don't think, I also, I think that that creates somewhat of a disconnect between design and what we're doing. And it doesn't matter how experienced your architect is, how experienced your interior designer, your engineer are, they're still designing something that is one of a kind, that's
Mhm.
custom, that you have no idea how much that's going to cost until you sit down and work through those numbers. So you can't, as a customer, you can't, or a contractor, you can't just say, hey, you know what? This is what you wanted. This is what it costs. It's having the conversation. Hey, here are all the numbers. Here's what's driving the cost. Here's what we can do to get that cost down.
It's a great point, and that's where, like, how, the question, how do you charge for pre-construction? It's like, well, you bring value to the process, and what you just said is what is that value. Is the value is you're bringing understanding of the project. Maybe you're involved early on. You help guide the project, and you're doing some pricing exercises to make sure that you're guiding down the right path. Or say you get a design development set that's pretty baked, and you're looking at it, and then you price it, and you realize they're way over budget, and you're absolutely right. You can't just be like, dude, I didn't like whatever. Like you wanted to be at 2 million, you designed a $4 million project. If they're bringing you to the table, and ultimately, especially if you're being paid for pre-construction, your job is not to price the job in that phase. Your job is to help make the job a reality, get it
Yeah.
to the starting line. And part of getting it to the starting line is, make bringing up opportunities and options that allow the project to be feasible for them. And if budget is what makes it feasible, then that's your job. You need to like if you price a drawing set and it's $4 million and their budget was two, it's like, well, you got to figure out, hey, can I offer do I have enough experience to be able to offer and help guide this project back to a $2 million job?
Yeah.
And people in when people bring that up, they're like, "Hey, I really want to be at 2 million." My response is, "No problem. We can help design a $2 million job, but what you've designed is not a $2 million job. It's
Yeah.
it's not a matter of cutting 50% of the scope, because 50% of the scope you lose, a tremendous amount of work. Let's look at this in a different way. It's like if $2 million is our cap, then we need to design a project that fits within that."
And it's
And
all that, sorry.
no, God.
That's why it's important also to select a contractor who you trust,
Mhm.
whose aesthetic and process that you like, because a $2 million job for you is going to be different than a $2 million job for another contractor. Your
Totally.
pricing structure is different, your level of execution is different, your level of communication is different. So finding who you trust and who you like, getting those high level numbers, and then moving forward at that point, you're reducing the chance of getting in bed with a contractor that you don't like, or who's
Mhm.
price gouging you, or who's not willing to work with design. So I think that that's very important during this conversation. Um,
Yeah, and going back to the question of like how do you ask for more money on something that's fixed cost? Like, yeah, it does come down to communication, and it does matter. Like, I'm thinking of his dad, and someone shows up on the site, and I don't know, like they ask for farrowing ball paint on the inside. Like this, hey, I need your paint colors, and then the homeowner shows up, and she's like, here you go, here's all my paint colors, and it's all farrowing ball, which is more expensive than Benmore.
yeah,
And she's like, and this is the paint I want to use. And he didn't specify in his proposal like Benmore paint or equivalent,
yep,
right? So it's like now he's painting the house, and he's paying what, 3x the material cost. And in that moment, it's, that's when to have that conversation. The problem is oftentimes it's like, no problem, they go up, buy the paint, realize it's more money, they put it up, and they're like, I can't ask her for more money, I included paint, like, it is what it is. It's like, no, it's not, is what it is. It's, having that conversation in that moment, but it's also being very clear with your specifications, right?
Yeah.
And what's in your proposal, and that's where, like, I think that, I mean, that's the first mistake that is made, is that these proposals aren't detailed enough.
Yeah. And so if you in this situation where this guy is asking, basically his dad's conceding these costs, whether it's during the job, at the point of transaction, the point of selection, whatever that may be, if it's fixed price and they want to maintain and stay on budget, there's two things you can do. You can concede and pay for it,
Mhm,
or you can tell them upfront that's not in the budget. You cannot afford that. So you need to choose something that's within the budget.
mhm,
If you allow them to choose that and don't immediately have them sign a change order for it, then you're liable for those costs
mhm,
because it's your job to keep them on budget. So, as Nick said, if you have a very specific scope and spec sheet and all of this stuff detailed and itemized, now when they go to choose that Pharaoh and ball paint, you can say, okay, this is how much it's going to cost to buy the paint. Here's your fixed price contract with the budget that we have for paint.
mhm,
So that's X amount more to buy that. Do you want to go over budget and do that? If you want to
mhm.
maintain budget, then we have to go get Benmore or Sherwin-Williams fits the budget, whatever that may be. Maybe customers are disappointed, but again, that's where the communication comes in. Where if they signed a contract beforehand that says Benmore or equivalent, that doesn't include Farrow and Ball. So that's on them at that point. That's not your issue. Um,
But
so
it's your issue to communicate that in that moment, though. It's like,
ex-
"Hey, we can do for own ball. I can also color match it, with a
exactly.
Ben Moore." But the reality is that that product is out of our price point. And this goes back to, I've talked about it before, but I interview all of our clients after the project, but I started implementing this, like, monthly check-in, where I think I've said it before, but just for those that haven't heard, like, I will reach out to every client on a monthly basis, and I will just ask the simple question of, how are we doing, 1 through 10. That's it. I just, like, give me a number, how we're doing 1 through 10. And, usually it's a 9. 10 is like when they're super excited about something. 9 means, like, hey, nothing's perfect, but I'm really happy. 8 means, like, yeah, yeah, everything's good. Like, I'm kind of just, like, coasting. 7 probably means they wanted to give us a 6 and they were nice, and I'm hopping on the phone immediately with
Hmm.
them, and then the site super and project managers are like, hey, we got to correct something. But in doing all of this, any time that score has come low, which is rare, or in the interviews that I've had after a project, you know, figuring out, like, what the pain points were, usually it revolves around communication, budget, or schedule. And what I would argue is that the budget and schedule is also communication, but they're just hyper focused on one of them. And what I mean by that is, when I ask, oh yeah, budget was really difficult, like, well, what was it about the budget? It's like, well, we were over budget by 20%. It's like, understood. Like, do you understand why? It's like, well, not really. It's like, so did we communicate those costs correctly, or those changes correctly? Well, not really. So if we had communicated why certain things were more expensive, you would have felt better about it. Oh yeah, 100%. So it's not a budget issue; it's a communication issue.
And that's typically the case with anything. To come to a customer or a consumer with put everything on the table and then allow them to make a decision based on, what they value, what the cost increase would be, it's going to be a non-issue. Or if they just don't want to spend the money on it.
Hmm.
But to make assumptions or have that conversation after the fact, whether it's the right decision or not, or whether they value the upgrade or not, it's too late at that point. And I'm sitting here having this conversation and I'm thinking to myself, in what world would building a custom home on a fixed fee really be beneficial to a customer? If maybe if quality isn't of the utmost importance to them, maybe because they just say, hey, this is how much we have to spend. We don't really care as long as it has 4 bathrooms and 6 bedrooms, whatever it may be, then yeah, maybe a fixed price is the way to go. But when you get into something that somebody wants custom, I just don't understand wanting to back yourself into a corner where you have to make selections based on a financial value that would really drive the direction of that project.
I I'm gonna argue with that because I think the fixed cost, I would love to be at a point where we could guarantee the price, guarantee the schedule. And, like, I've said that out loud. It's not like,
But
but hear me out. The fixed cost, I really don't think is a bad thing, and even at, like, a very high level, because what it's gonna come down to is, what the point that I'm hearing you talk about is quality, and it's like, well, you're gonna be a little bit more lax with quality, but, well, just like I'm specifying, a specific tile in my scope of work for that fixed cost, I could also specify the level of quality in which it needs to be installed. And it goes back to, this goes to the expectation, setting those expectations very clearly, where it's like we could operate on a fixed cost. The thing with fixed cost is, for the builder, you have the opportunity to make bigger margins because you're fixing the cost, and if you come in, if you buy the job down, you can increase your margin. With cost plus, your margin's pretty much set, with the exception of like self-performed labor and things like that. But your margin is pretty much set. But on the flip side, cost plus, like, you're guaranteed that margin, where fixed costs, if you don't have your shit straight, like, that margin can decrease really quickly. Now, with that fixed cost and at a very high level of quality, like, what's going to be important is going to be a well executed design, written scope, completed design documents, like, everything for you to understand exactly what is going into that project. Now, when you have a 90% CD set, and you're going to do it on a fixed cost, and it's $1 million fixed cost, well, there's still 10% of the job that hasn't been finalized. So you're going to read through that budget, and there's probably, if as long as you're savvy, you're going to have some line items in that budget that say allowance, tile allowance, figured at $20 per square foot. Well, it's not fixed cost anymore. It's fixed cost with a bunch of allowances, which essentially you could argue that it's the same thing.
And that's what my argument is, like, essentially that if you are producing a detailed budget with fixed cost and line items for everything, it's not any different. Why wouldn't you just go with
Mhm,
a cost plus? If What is the benefit of going to fixed fee if that's not all? It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, it's essentially the same thing at that level. If somebody has produced a detailed fixed cost budget, it still gives you an opportunity to say, hey, we haven't made a tile selection, but this is where we think this is going to be. I would
mhm,
rather give my builder the opportunity to create that budget and go through these details pre-construction with them, and then make these decisions as things are progressing, rather than be locked into a budgetary number that is like, hey, we only priced out $5 a square foot.
mhm,
I don't see, if somebody does their due diligence with a fixed cost budget, how much more beneficial that is to somebody, because I think at the end of the day, if a builder's margins are close, he's gonna start cutting corners in
mhm,
places. Most builders aren't aren't like the guys and girls you see on Instagram in our community that, they're gonna realize they shortchanged a person, and they want to stand behind their business, and are going to do the right thing. They're coming down to it, they're gonna start shopping paint out, because our paint number, like, we're low, and everything else, we're
mhm,
not making the margins. Let's get a painter in here that costs less money.
mhm.
Let's start finding sub trades, post specialty subs and utility subs that um, we can start getting better numbers for. And to me, like, I would rather not go that route if I was building a house or doing a renovation.
Yeah, and this, I mean, like, everything we just said, expectation and communication, and and as builders and general contractors and so on and so forth, like, it is our job to set the parameters up front. You got to go into this with, a well detailed proposal. It takes a lot of time, and but without that, you don't really have a lot to lean on. The guys out there doing spec, we have some spec projects that we're working on, and we are defining our standard building practices, like for a handful of reasons. Like from a financing perspective, they want to understand how we're building it, that it aligns with the product that we're marketing, right? So, but at the end of the day, the guys that are out there building, a more typical product, you know, they're gonna have a specification list. It's like, what are they like? What is their standard sheathing? What is their roofing underlaying? Like, they're gonna have a handful of those specifications, and I think that, and I'm making the assumption that this guy that wrote this question, his dad probably does similar projects like that, or he's building these customs, with on a fixed cost, whether it's a spec or a custom. Um, and then they come in and they just change. It's the little changes, and it just becomes this, this nuisance of, yep, no problem, we'll just take care of it. And it's, he's done all the work up front in the proposal. Now they're under construction and stuff gets changed, and it's like, dude, I don't have time to go back and write a change order. I don't have time to go reprice this. I got to get it in, and I got to move on to the next one. And so to directly answer that question that came in on our DM, it's, in that very moment is when you need to address that. And if
Yeah.
and if you do not have what that price is, you need to explain that this is with outside of the budget, and we can, if we're going to proceed, then you need to understand that this is outside the budget, and there's I can put together a cost estimate, or I need the time to reprice this, and I'll get back to you. But I think there's a big issue here, is that people are trying to build homes, consumers, right, are trying to build and buy homes that are bigger and more detailed than they truthfully can afford. And they're doing it by squeezing, again, I've said it before, by squeezing all of the specialty trades and the little guys. So now these guys aren't making a fair living, but hey, the consumer gets a really big, nice house. And it's in that in what that does is that it continually drives up this unrealistic market of like, hey, I built my house for $169 a square foot. It's like,
Yeah.
how did you do that? And the reality is, if you actually went through every cost on that and you talked to every person involved on that job, I bet that there would be more. The majority of them probably would be like, yeah, that job sucked. Like, I literally lost money on that job. I would never do it again. But they're promoting it as like, I can build a house for 169.
Yeah.
I, I'm gonna bring this up because I read, and I got to be careful because I don't want to use names or the publication. I read this article the other day, and really cool house. I'm gonna send it to you later. Really cool house, and about 4,000 square feet. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, man, this is so cool. Like the design is like, just spot on, and stuff started looking familiar. And then I'm like, holy shit, I know who built this.
Mhm.
Like, I was, and so I reached out to them. I was like, hey, congrats on the feature. And I think I had made a comment about, like, because in the magazine they talked about how much it cost to build.
Yeah.
And I had made a comment like, "That's crazy, like, congrats on the feature, but, like, I can't believe they built it for that number." And he wrote back, and he was like, "They didn't. It was actually 2x that." And I was like, "You know what? This is so typical." It's like, you and like, all day I thought about it. I'm like, "Now let's think about how many people read that article and then call me or you and say, 'Hey, look at this house. It cost, you know, I'm just going to make up numbers. $200 a square foot to build this house. Can you build it?' And you look at it and it's like, what? That?
Was he aware that they were going to do that with the pricing?
No, he didn't even know it was being published.
Oh.
And he was like, I really wish they did because I would have told him. But it's just like, you are now misleading all of these people that they can build this 4,000 square foot house for a price that's literally half of what it actually did cost. So now when they go and go price it with another builder, like, say they call me and they're like, hey, can you build this? And I'm 2x.
Yeah.
They're like, well, why are you 2x? It's
I
like,
don't get who is that serving by publishing information like that?
Who's serving?
Yeah, like who's that helping?
I think no, it's not helping anyone. I think that their intent is to help people think that things are more obtainable and they should go on this journey of building their own home and all
But
this
that's
stuff.
what like how's it helping anyone? I don't get it. It doesn't
I don't know.
it I don't know how that is more appealing. Maybe they think that maybe they aren't marketing to or they're essentially marketing to people who that would be more affordable.
But it doesn't even matter. This is a specific example, but it's everything. It's all these homes that are being built, and then people are like, "What'd that cost to build?" It's like, "Oh, that one's like 320 a foot," and it's like, but did it really cost? Like, was that 320 a foot based on everyone making a fair living on that? Like, your one man tile guy, like, did he make a good living? Did your your plumbing crew, like, did they have a was that profitable for them? And it's like, trust me, listen, I know there's plenty of people that are like, I don't give a shit if the plumber makes money. Like he drives a brand new F-350, he's good. It's like, no, that's the issue. That's an issue.
Yeah, because
We
that trickles down, that
it
affects
it
everyone.
trickles down. It will affect everyone. Next thing you know, it's like you can't get help. It's like, why can't we get help? It's like because you've been beating the shit out of them for the last 2 decades. And it's being promoted that way where it's like, hey, I can build that for 320 a foot. It's like I wish we could unpack that more, and I would love to figure out how we can do that. And I think that with our development stuff and the stuff that we're going to build for sale, I think that I would love to document that process and see if we can share that more transparently because we don't want to share our clients' finances,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
but maybe there's an opportunity where it's like, hey, here's what it really costs. The problem is the shit that we're designing is just very atypical. But but at least like walk them through like, hey, this is what it truly does cost. And it's like, yeah, we're selling it for this much money, and our projected profit is 20%. Like that's not bad. That's pretty normal. Like,
Yeah, and
but
I mean, if that's how you want to be making a living and that's how you wanna make a business, those numbers are all there's no reason in hiding those numbers. If it scares some potential buyers away, okay, that this
right.
is the market that we are, putting ourselves out towards. This is who we want as a buyer. I don't see an issue with fully disclosing that information. I mean, you have it tracked if you were doing business the way that you were doing business with all of the systems, processes, software, there's no reason why that you can't figure out an exact square footage cost for each one of your builds and be fully transparent with that. If that's what it costs to build a house for you, then yeah, like that's what I want my customers to know. And if you built that house and didn't sell it for enough or you left money on the table, like clearly articulate that. Hey, we built this house for X amount. We would have rather been in this number per square foot that would have given us a better margin on this project.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not going to hurt anyone. And everyone's market's different. So I think that those numbers are going to be different in every market, but I think at least seeing what goes into a project of
Mhm.
that caliber and determining those prices and seeing how much time goes into it, because that's the thing. At the end of the day, the time is going to be the same. It's winds up what people's time is worth in each and every market.
Right, and this is where you introduce efficiencies, and that, obviously I'm on this, like, offsite building kick right now and thinking about, like, how much I can prefabricate before it shows up on a job site, but, you can also be having these conversations where it's like, "Oh, you gotta buy down your subs, buy down, like, see if you can get this guy to compete at a lower number," and I listen, I've been there, I've done that, and it's never really worked out to our advantage. You're getting a lesser quality because this guy has to come in, still make his numbers. Where it's like we've taken a wildly different approach where, rather than trying to get guys to compete against each other, let them compete against themselves. And I don't mean that in like how do you like tell them to make less money. No, you tell me what I need to do as a GC to make you be more efficient. If you can
Yeah.
do this in half the time, like, hey, painter, you gave me a price for $54,000 to paint this whole home. Okay. Like I'm trying to target like 50 grand. We're not too far off. How could I get my number to 50 grand? rather than say, "Hey, will you do it for 50 grand?"
Mhm.
It's like, what do I need to do to get it to 50 grand? It's like, well, if you can get all the trades out of here and we have the house to our complete self and I can work, I can work Saturdays, whatever it is. It's like I can definitely hit that number because we can move more efficiently. And it's like, okay, so you just need the house to yourself, which side note, there's a great meme going around right now where it's like the painter walks in and it's like when the painter shows up on schedule
Oh,
and then,
yeah,
and
I
then it
saw
pans
that.
over and it's like the electrician drywall. It's like shit, 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 which is amazing because it's exactly what happens. A painter
Uh-huh.
shows up and there's still trades and they're like, what's going on? It's like, can't you just work around them? It's like, I bid the job for 50 grand. You promised me I'd have the whole house. And then he's
That's
like,
like the floor guy always is complaining to me about that
yeah.
every time he goes on to another guy's job
Hmm.
and he's trying to install floor or finish floor and they're overlapping subs and he's
Hmm.
like, "I'm trying to sand and finish floors here and you're bringing guys in and out of the job." And like not only is it creating efficiency issues with him, but it's compromising his finished product when he's trying to do the best job that he can
Right.
and it's being affected. And the builder's like, "Oh, it's good enough." And he's like, "Well,
Yeah.
I don't want it to. It's my. This is my name on everything. That's
Right.
my name on my truck."
Hmm.
And he's always so frustrated about it and so grateful when I get him to my jobs. And it's like nobody's here. I'm not even going to be here. Like
Yeah.
we'll come in, we'll do layout, we'll do what we need to. I'll check in at the end of the day, but give the job site to them, especially for those type of trades.
But these are the things. By the way, Matt Hackett, thanks for tuning in to YouTube Live. He just commented best meme ever, which I
He's
would
probably a
agree.
painter.
He might be a painter. But I mean, these are the conversations that we need to be having with our trades, where it's like, listen, you want to be more efficient. A lot of these guys are pricing based on the inefficiencies they face on other jobs, where it's like, hey, okay, like what do you need? Like, what do you need to be at a more aggressive price point? I don't want you to make less money. I'm not asking you to take a bath
Or
on this
compromise on quality.
or compromise on quality. What is it that you need for us to hit the number that I'm targeting? Maybe they can't. But oftentimes when you ask that question, they already have a handful of things in their mind, thinking about it. It's like, hey, yeah, we could, rather than doing all hard duct work, we can do all flex pipe. It's like, okay, what's my downfall if I use all flex? Well, it might get crushed. It's like, all right, like, so we got to just think about where it goes and make sure it doesn't get crushed. She's like, yeah, in reality, it should be fine. It's like, how much can I save? You can save 10% on the job. Okay, well, maybe I got to do that. Like, am I suffering quality on that? No, not in this case. Great. There's 10%. You got to ask the question. You got to and lean on these guys to be an asset to the project. Because at the end of the day, like, everything we talk about, making sure people make a fair living, making sure that the job is profitable, the builder's profitable, that the quality isn't compromised. I'm not saying that this just needs to be this open-ended checkbook of like, hey, these homes are just going to be super expensive and you have to deal with it. It's no, we still got to be aggressive and we got to be competitive with ourselves. Like you still want to get the best product for the best price. Like I'm not saying otherwise. I'm just saying that when you are like, don't do it at you know the my god, the word just literally escaped my brain.
Gone.
At the disservice of the sub. No, that's not the word I was looking for.
No, that I mean, that yeah, like, that would make
At the
sense.
there's a word for that. I don't know. Greenside Mike from Greenside. I think he gave us the middle finger.
I do too.
What an asshole.
He's flying here.
All right. Well, nice
Um,
nice to see you chime
so
in, Mike.
something that you mentioned earlier that I wanna dig into a little bit is that you feel cost plus is typically reserved for 1,000,000 plus builds, and why you think that that's a standard
That
and
because I
why.
said that?
Yeah, I'm just curious, like, why is it because there's not enough money in pre-construction?
No, I
Um
don't I mean, we operate on cost plus exclusively
Mhm.
at this point. Um my comment earlier
Yeah,
was
I think Mike's got it, detriment.
detriment. Yes, thank you, Mike. He really redeemed himself there.
Yeah, he
Um
did, except he spelled it wrong.
that's okay. Um my comment about the under 1 million mark for cost plus oftentimes being an issue. I just we've always done it and we've worked through it, but that's where we typically get the most pushback is under that, where it's like, well, the scope is like defined. You can't you fix that cost? Like where are the things that you can't? Where can't you fix that, or we're operate on a fixed cost. And, for sub million for us, at least, like most of the stuff is going to be a renovation.
Mhm.
We're not building brand new for sub
Even more
million.
important even more important to do cost plus where you
Yeah,
don't know what the hell you're getting into.
exactly. And that's really the conversation where it's like, yeah, we could fix some numbers, but the reality is like, this is like, there's a lot of unknowns here. And, people oftentimes will say, well, cost plus puts all the risk on the client and fixed cost puts all the risk on the builder. Like you got to pick one or the other. It's like, I don't really agree with that. And I think
No,
that,
because, right, if you have a definitive scope,
well, this is what,
it's change orders. Like,
and
if that's the game you wanna play.
totally. And Tyler, you said earlier about having a cost plus model, but with a defined scope. This is where I think you get the people that take advantage of the cost plus model, where it's like they'll just put a loosey goosey estimate together. Where it's like, hey, it's about $1 million. Like, sign this, cost plus 20%. Next thing you know, it's like $2 million, and they're still making the 20%. It's like, dude, how did you miss us? Oh, it was just an estimate.
Yeah.
That's not how we operate. So I'm gonna I keep meaning to look at this. Um, so when we do a cost plus estimate, our budget sheet is extremely detailed. Oh shit, I thought I had it open and I don't. But I want to say it's roughly, actually, here we go. Let me pull it open just to make sure I'm speaking accurately. But we have a detail sheet which defines line by line exactly what the project, like the definition of the project. So, all right, I have, before my subtotal line, I have 1,539 line items above that, and that's category by category. Like, you know, um, well, yeah, what are they? The CSI codes, like, right? Like each category, and that's completely defined in, for every step of the project, all the trades, anything that's a proposal, it's clearly outlined. Like, it will say the, ABC plumbing proposal dated 3/21. Here's his scope defined. It's one lump sum of $54,000. Blah 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 blah. But it's completely defined. We're operating on cost plus. At the end of the day, they just pay whatever it costs plus our fee. But we're not going to go like, this is where the value is. It's like, no, I know that, like, contractually we're cost plus, but we want to make sure that we're an asset to you and that we're bringing accurate information. So we're going to do the due diligence. And our goal, if the design is baked 100%, our goal is to be able to present you a budget that is 100%.
Yeah.
Nothing is left to define. Now, lumber sways in a different direction. Like, yeah, we're covered. Like, it's caught. Like, that's the cost of the lumber. If it goes down, hey, that's better for you. And when we sign a contract, you want me to pre-order everything? No problem. That's the way we want to operate. The moment I know what tile selection is, order it.
Yeah.
Pay
So
for it. Get the PO. Ask them to store it. They tell you they can only store for 30 days. Ask for 60. They can't. Get a storage unit.
so mine being a smaller company is not necessarily the same as far as I'm charging a percentage of the build, but it's uh, for lack of a better term, I would present it to customers as this cost plus model where it's the cost of everything, my markup on my goods sold to them, my cost of my subcontractors, the markup on them, and then the cost of my labor or somebody who's working for my labor. And that already includes my markup to cover my overhead and profit. Um, so we're going into this saying, hey, this is the scope of work, this is what my sub scope of work is. And if that changes throughout this process, we now have a written scope for my sub. Anything that we change may be more. If it winds up being less, great, it's less. Typically subs numbers are pretty tight, so they're not coming in much less. And then my labor, where what I think I'm going to have as far as management time, what I charge for that, what I think I'm going to have bags on time, what I charge for that, and I just track all of these things. And we're able to track budget as we go. Also, developing a full comprehensive scope for approval for whoever needs to, if there's a designer, if the customer, so I can sit down and I can write this job out, the narrative of this job on paper as to what I'm going to do first, what I'm going to do second,
Yeah.
what this job looks like,
Mm-hmm.
and then build a schedule around those two things. So now I can look at my budgeted spreadsheet. I can look at my scope of work, and I can look at my schedule, and I can make sure that I pull out, see what my profit is based on all of my markups, my labor, what I think I have in my markup on materials, figure out what I'm walking away from with this job, and look at how much time I have there. And it's just a way to circle back and check all my numbers. And as you're going throughout this job, you can maintain budget. You can see if things have increased. If the cost of lumber has gone up, you can say, hey, this is what we budgeted for lumber.
Mhm.
It's more. You can decide, hey, we this was more, but before we collect more money for this, let's see where this job lands, and maybe we're under budget and it's a wash. So you like, it's different than the way that you're doing things, but it's not that much different where I'm tracking all of the costs and I'm guaranteeing that if we go over, we're going to have a conversation about what do you want to do at this point, because I don't want my subs to be tied into a number where they're guessing at shit and then it takes 2 days longer and they're rushing through it or not taking their time. I want to give them some leeway too, where it's not like, I don't think it's fair to say my subs numbers are hard, but my numbers not.
Right.
That doesn't make it, like, how's that fair? You guys have to, it doesn't make any sense. So it's the conversation with my customers. Hey, if it's more, it's a little bit more. I'll pay you. We'll catch up on the next one. Do I
Mhm.
want to present this to my customer? But at least I have numbers to back that up. And I've had the conversation with customers. It's like, hey, the plumbing costs a little bit more, but I think our hardwood number may come in a little less because the cost of lumber has gone down. So we're just going to track those costs, and rather you pay me right now, let's just see where it lands. And I can have that conversation with them. But it's all about the communication, full transparency, and managing budget and schedule as you go.
I'm gonna give I think the single most important tip when it comes to communicating cost changes is speed. Like, no doubt. Like, I've seen it time and time again where we go through analysis paralysis with trying to price something, getting them
Oh,
updates,
yeah.
where it's like, no, just get the information to them as quickly as possible.
Yep.
Because otherwise, and internal, like, it's happened internally where it's like, hold on, there's a ton of stuff changing, there's a ton of things being asked. We gotta get through this. We gotta figure out like exactly what it's gonna cost. When and what happens is that angst for us starts really like flooding into the customer's mind, and now they're anxious where it's like, holy shit, this is taking a really long time for them to get pricing. This is going to be bad news. Like, is this like going to blow up? Like, are we going to be able to afford it? And it's like, wait a second, just pump the brakes. When a client drops in the middle of the meeting, it's like, hey, I'd love to paint that whole powder room high gloss blue. It's like, don't just shut up and like go then price it and then come back 2 weeks later and be like, hey, it's $8,000 more to paint that powder room high gloss blue. And for anyone that's listening and my team, like, this did not happen. This is a made up example because we just painted a powder room high gloss blue. I'm using that as the example, not the price part. But point is like, well, in that meeting, that's a perfect opportunity. It's like, hey, we can do that. Just so make sure everyone's clear. High gloss is a way different price point. It's super labor intensive. I know it's incredibly expensive. Are we okay to go through the pricing exercise? The client might squash it right there, be like, oh, I didn't realize it was more money. I
Yeah.
thought it would be similar. Or they might say, how much more do you think it is? And my super might not know. He might be like, I'm not sure. But knowing that the client wants to know how much it is before they make a decision, what you can do is you can pull out your phone and text your painter and be like, hey, that job that we're doing right now with that powder room, it's like, 4 foot by 6 foot. They're thinking about painting it all high gloss blue. Like, what do you think that's going to cost? Oh, I'd have to put together. No, no, no. Before you spend any time on it,
Yeah.
are we talking like that room's $1,000 to paint with Ben Moore and 8,000 to do it high gloss? Like, what's the rough magnitude? He might be like, dude, that's like 4 times the price, easy. You can
Yeah.
just go back and be like, hey, we're 4x the cost of that room. And they're like, oh, hell no. Like, if it was double, yeah, I'd do it. But it's
But
that's the speed that's going to make the client, again, the most important thing is speed in that, but like overarching is communication. And now you are facilitating that communication, and you are communicating at a really effective rate. You're getting that information to the client, even if it's rough, just the order of magnitude, so they can make educated decisions. Otherwise, you spend 3 weeks waiting for that. Then he's like, well, do you want me to do a sample? Like, yeah, I'll do a sample. And then they do the sample. It's like, I want it a little bit more glossy. I want it to be more spray finish. And then you go, next thing you know, 7 weeks go by and then they price it at like $15,000 instead of 1,000. The client's
Like,
like, what?
no way.
No
Yeah.
way. It's like, you just
Yeah.
wasted all this time when it's like, all you need to do is get that order of magnitude delivered to that client so they could either continue or hit the brakes.
Yeah, because if they were gonna say no to 8, they're certainly gonna say no to 15.
Right.
So, and again, that's the whole communication to reiterate that. And if it's something that's a unique project or, a unique painting something gloss, like that painter is going, no matter how many gloss rooms they've done, is going to have to stab at what that's going to take. Every single room is different. Every finish reacts a different way.
Mhm.
And to ensure that your customers know that, hey, this is where we think we're going to be as far as paint labor. This is how much we think we have in materials. This is what that paint number looks like right now. We're going to have to track this. And again, I think it's so important to have that communication with your customers to make sure you're working for the customers that trust you,
Mhm.
because I don't think it's fair to anyone to lock someone into a number to something where they don't know what's going to happen or what they're getting into or what's going to be involved.
Mhm.
Even with people who do the same thing day in and day out, every single job is different. Every job is unique. You run into issues. I've used this tile a million times and it's never, the glazing is never cracked like this every time we go to cut it or put receptacles in a backsplash. And it just, you never know. And you people, I had a GC who would just be like, hey, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It all evens out in the end. And it's like, maybe you shouldn't burn somebody and then like lose money on another job, and just make the money that you think you're going to make and have that
Mhm.
open conversation with customers. And I mean, I was meeting with that engineer today regarding the property that we're looking to build on, and there's things that we don't know, and no matter how experienced you are, it's like, hey, I'm going to give you a proposal. It's going to have some hard numbers for things that we know, like survey, research, how much time I need in to look through zoning, but then there's going to be other unforeseens and issues that we have to deal with the state and EPA that we don't know how long that's going to take. So I'm going to
Mhm.
budget time for it and give you a number, and it's kind of going to be piecemeal and time and material. And like, why would I ever go to that engineer and be like, I need a hard number from you that I'm going to know exactly what this is going to cost? If I'm that concerned with it, I can be like, hey, are we going to be over $20,000 worst case scenario? No. Okay. Like, then we're good to go. Where do you think we're going to fall? I'm not going to hold you to this. You can get an idea, but to back him into a corner with a number that he has to stand behind, I don't feel serves me. I don't feel it serves him. So why do that? And
100%.
it's no different than when you're hiring a contractor.
Yeah.
Um, and I think as far as the question from this listener goes, I think that there's nothing wrong with building for a fixed cost. Um, you just have to have the conversation and the scope to support that, because anything that's above that fixed fee needs to get nixed immediately or a change order filed for the added cost, or else it is going to be on you and your dad's going to have to concede to all these costs, and he's going to be leaving money on the table. And it's as simple as that. At the end of the day, you have to have the numbers, the scope, and the specs to support what you're building. And if it doesn't fit the budget, you either need to nix it or get paid for it immediately when the decision is made.
Guys, I would love to understand or see how you guys feel about what we just chatted about, because I feel like there's a lot of people that are going to have a different opinion here, especially around what trades get fixed cost versus cost plus. So continue to communicate with us through the DMs on Modern Craftsman podcast on Instagram. Like Tyler said in the beginning, we do have someone monitoring those for us to make sure that we get to some of these questions. And real quick, Tyler, I just got a text from Doug,
Yeah.
and he asked me to turn on the NAS before I leave. And I was like, Nas, like
Music?
the rapper, like he wanted me to play music on the way out. But he's talking about this giant server he bought.
Oh,
This thing
yeah, yeah,
makes
yeah,
so
that you
much
keep
goddamn noise.
I thought it was the rapper too.
I was like, all right, I'll play some music for Doug on the way. Oh, it's Nas. My bad.
Nas.
Not Nas.
Oh.
But either way, guys, appreciate you guys sending those questions in.
Yeah,
And
if you guys wanna reach out to me specifically, email me, Tyler at trghomeconcepts.com. Um, DMs get lost in the mix. So if it's something I need to loop Nick into, we'll do it on the regular Modern Craftsman. If it's something I can handle on my own, I'll do it on midweek. But that's definitely going to be the best for me. So if you have something specifically for me, email is going to work out best. I have a few in my inbox I need to get to. But yeah, I appreciate all the questions, reaching out, all the support and everything else.
and I mentioned it in the beginning of this podcast. I this question came up in one of my consulting calls. So if you want to book time with me, nickschiffer.com/booking. Tyler, you got a link too if someone wanted to book some time with you, right?
Yeah, it's through my Instagram. There's a book now. Somebody actually just emailed me asking if I have availability for consulting. So mine is through, if you're on my Instagram page, there's a book now. What I tell people, I only have certain time slots um, available in there. So if it's something that doesn't fit those time slots, I'm generally getting on a phone call after somebody requests an appointment and just figuring out what time works for them and blocking an hour out. So don't turn that away because you don't think it's going to fit into your schedule. Shoot me an email and we can figure out a time and a day that works for you based around your schedule.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys listening. Again, thanks to our sponsors, Andersen Windows, as well as Buildertrend. See you guys next week.
Thank you.